As always, I'm your host, Justin Baker, and as always, I'm joined by resident old bastard, Chris Saturn.
Hello.
Hello. Saturn, for the first time in a long time, we have no housekeeping.
You're keeping me up way too late. I'm too old for this, Justin.
Look, man, you're the one that did 20 minutes of uncut pre-show with me. At any point, you could have been like, let's do a show. It's 10 o'clock. I need to record and go to bed.
I don't know how to interrupt people. I've never gained that ability.
Instead, we talked about cars. That's weird...
Well, we're spinning this show off into a new season of Car Talk.
Yeah, it's a new show that we're calling Regular Dudes, where we talk about normal people stuff, where we're like, how about that sports game, and you know how cars get you to places, right? That's pretty great. And then that's about it, because that's all we know.
It's the only things that are out there.
My week,
what my kid did.
I've been playing Final Fantasy VII Remake on PC.
Yeah. How was the PC port of it?
Well,
because I played the game twice back-to-back on PS4, so I'm pretty familiar with it at this point.
I don't know what the Epic Game Store version is like, because I'm not playing the Epic Game Store version.
But I thought it was exclusive to the Epic Game Store.
It is, and the version I'm playing did not come from the Epic Game Store.
Weird.
And that's as incriminating as I'm going to get about my activities. But it seems to run just fine on my PC. I still game on my PC at 1080p.
Okay.
At non HDR. Like, it's just so it looks good for a 1080p non HDR game for me.
Yeah.
My plan was I was going to play it on my PC and then stream it to my NVIDIA Shield, to the Steam Link app on my Shield.
Right.
Which I've had nothing but trouble with.
Really?
And a lot of it is because I play a lot of non-Steam games. And when you play non-Steam games via Steam Link, normally what I use is a software layer called Virtual Here.
Okay.
Which, if you buy it in Steam, it's like $9 for a license. And what it does is it makes your USB controller or Bluetooth controller from whatever you're connecting with appear to be natively connected to the PC that is running Steam.
Okay. Because
normally what Steam does is it has to pass your controller inputs through some sort of Steam controller layer to the system.
Yeah.
If you run Virtual Here, it does not. So when you load up a GOG game or a whatever that doesn't know how to interface with that Steam controller layer, you won't have controller support unless you're using Virtual Here.
Yeah. I've noticed that when I tried to play Silent Hill 2 over my Steam Link.
So I use Virtual Here. Here's the problem with Virtual Here. It's only supported on an actual Steam Link, not via the Steam Link app.
That's dumb.
The Steam Link app has no support for Virtual Here. So I cannot play Final Fantasy VII Remake because it is not a Steam game via the Steam Link app.
That's lame.
So I installed my actual Steam Link, which continued to have problems running a non-Steam game remotely. Wasn't wanting to work. So finally, I just said, fuck it, and I've been playing via Parsec, which continues to be a fantastic way to stream your games around your house.
Yeah.
And so I've been playing via Parsec on my laptop, and it runs just fantastic, because Parsec always runs just fantastic.
Yeah.
And I'm still really early in the game. I'm kind of struggling with how really dumb the characters are.
I gotta say, one of the characterization was what I appreciated about the game more than I thought I would, because some of the dialogue is pretty cheesy or dumb, but I feel like they did a good job of making the characters feel much more human than they did in the original game, especially by the end.
Now I'm at a point where I've not experienced the characterization, the long-term characterization. I've only experienced the cheesy dialogue.
The introductions.
Because I'm in the early part of the game. Like, there's one scene early on where Cloud is talking to, in air quotes, Flower Girl.
Yep.
And he literally goes, "You don't want to get involved with me. I'm involved with some dangerous things." And it's just literally a fucking person on the street he's saying this to. And I was just like, oh my God, I can't do it. And then Barrett's on the train fucking screaming at people.
Yeah, that's what he does.
For just in their fucking faces shouting at them.
That's, in fairness, he is an eco-terrorist.
True, but here's the thing. The game, Final Fantasy VII has always been kind of edgelordy.
Yes.
It has.
It was pretty mildly edgelordy compared to later Final Fantasy games.
Compared to 8, yeah. But it was always pretty edgelordy. But they were Lego people.
Right.
And so it didn't come across quite so edgelordy at the time.
Yeah.
But having Cloud in full HD resolution with his little boy band face going, I'm involved with some dangerous things. It's just too much. I will say I'm coming around on the combat.
Yeah.
For when I played the demo, that's what turned me off. I didn't like the combat because I was annoyed that I didn't feel like I had much control over my party.
Right.
And I'm on I'm on normal difficulty, but I'm on the like classic mode, I guess they call it.
Okay, yeah.
And on that mode, it's okay. I'm getting used to it. When it's just Cloud, which it is right now, because again, I'm very early in the game. I don't even have a party yet. I did the intro portion and then my party left.
Yeah.
It's good. I like it when it's just Cloud. I don't know how it's going to feel when I have all three party members. But I think I'm kind of warming up to the combat, and I think I'm going to put in more time. I don't know if I'm going to finish it. And this was kind of what we said when the game came out. It was like, I don't know about a whole 40-hour game that's literally the most boring part of a much larger game.
I will say that it kept me interested more than I thought it would. And the ending is, it's satisfying, even if I know that it's only the first portion of the game.
I mean, granted, it doesn't have to be very satisfying to be more satisfying than the game's actual ending. So,
meanwhile, 200 years in the future.
Just going to put that out there. I think when we did the Final Fantasy VII episode, I think I yelled, what the fuck was that? When we hit the ending portion of that episode. But so yeah, I don't know. I think I'm going to stick with it. It's not like really grabbing me.
Right.
What I've discovered, which I felt weird about, was in my head, I was like, all right, well, the new stuff they add is what's going to be interesting. But it's actually kind of annoying me. Because I'm hitting the parts where it's like, okay, now you got to go to the bar and you got to talk to him there. And it's like I'm having that kind of, that weird sort of like reverse nostalgia thing with this remake. Yeah. But then they keep putting in new stuff that wasn't originally there. And I'm like, no, stop. I want to have my nostalgic experience. Right. Quit giving me these ghosts and shit.
Yeah, there are times where they're like, now go do this side quest for a character that you've never heard of. And I'm like, I don't care about that.
Yeah, you're like, I want the nostalgia.
Right.
You're interrupting the nostalgia. Give me the moment and then do the new shit.
Right.
So I don't know. Really very early. Probably will play more of it. Right now, I don't know if I'm going to commit 30, 40 hours to it.
It's fair.
But I've come around on the combat. I'll say that much. I'm feeling a little better about it. We'll see how it is when I have full party, full stats, full material loadouts, and I'm trying to figure that out.
On my second run of the game, when I finally remembered that you could block, it did make things a little easier.
I do keep forgetting you can block.
Yeah.
It's fair. I will say that I really think the demo, being that first section in the reactor, really is, at least as much as I've played after that, feels kind of non-representative for how the game really kind of goes down.
Yeah, I didn't play the demo, so I can't speak to that.
The demo is literally up through the Scorpion.
Okay.
And then it's over. And I think the demo really throws you off the deep end real fast, and then the game backs off a lot.
Right.
And I get why they did it that way, because how else would you do it?
Right.
Except for adding a big long prologue that people would complain about. So I get it. But I feel like maybe my experience with the demo is kind of non-representative of how the game is going to ease you into its systems.
Right. Yeah, because it does. It does. It makes more sense by the time you get halfway through.
Yeah, please tell me about Infernax. I'm very excited to hear about this game.
Before that, one thing I did want to mention is, now that I'm thinking about it, I played Trails from Zero on my Steam Link app on my Shield, and it recognized the controller just fine. And that's a fan translation of a Japanese disc that I have. So
some games will do it.
Okay.
Some games do not. Yeah. I cannot figure. What I've figured out is that a non-Steam game that the Steam overlay works in, it will work.
Okay.
But I couldn't get the Steam overlay to work in my Final Fantasy VII, so it does not work.
That makes sense. Yeah, my copy of Trails from Zero is the newest print of it. You can tell because it says works with Windows 8 on the box.
Perfect.
Yeah. So yeah, I have been playing Infernax. It was on Game Pass. So I downloaded it.
Oh, is it? Oh, I'm going to go download it then. I was looking at it on Steam, and I was like, this looks real fun, and it has axe in the title, and I like axes, and I'm going to go play it.
Yeah, so I downloaded it on Game Pass, and I'm enjoying it. And as soon as I realized that I was enjoying it, I was like, man, I wish there was a physical copy. I would buy that. And then I looked it up, and there was a physical copy on LRG, and they ended pre-orders for it a month before the game came out. So
thanks, LRG.
Yeah, that really frustrates me because I didn't know that I wanted it because I couldn't play it or talk to anyone who had played it yet at that point.
Yeah.
But anyway.
I'll sell you an NFT of it. That'll make you feel
Anyway. So I'm playing the game, and I would say that it feels like a love letter to games like Zelda 2 and Castlevania 2 and Xanadu.
Oh man, I like 1.5 of those. I'm excited.
Also, I've since learned that it's supposed to be Xanadu, but I think that's not. I think that's fucking stupid. So I'm not going to say it that way.
How long did you workshop that one?
Like minutes now. No, so it has some. It takes some things from each of those. Like as far as
when I hear the name, my first thought is I hope it's like Astion Axe or Legendary Axe. Is my first thought.
No, it's
not
more,
really. No,
it's more like a good Castlevania 2 with some systems from Zelda 2 and Xanadu mixed in.
See, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
It sounds good.
Yeah, it definitely takes a lot of inspiration from Castlevania 2, though, but without some of the bullshit. And
like the graveyard duck.
So there's a screen that is very clearly inspired by that screen. And if you go and you duck there, the tornado shows up just like in Castlevania 2, but it just straight up fucking murders you. And it gives you a little dialogue that's like, little did he know that if he happened to kneel in that location at that time, that the tornado would show up and end his life. It's hilarious. Anyway, no, it's really good, and it has various difficulties. It also has a ton of accessibility options. But before you open the accessibility menu, it's like, are you sure you want to look here? It'll spoil some story stuff. So I didn't actually look in there. Mm-hmm. But it does have a classic style difficulty and then a casual style difficulty.
Okay.
And the classic style plays kind of like Zelda 2 does, where it gives you multiple lives, and you can, if you die, you just get to restart that screen on your next life, which is fine. I'm fine with that. And that's how I'm trying to play it on classic difficulty. And I gotta say, the first like 2 hours of the game felt so easy compared to any of its inspirations. Just super forgiving. There's save points everywhere, and they full heal you as soon as you touch them, and they restore all of your lives as soon as you touch them.
But Saturn, I've been told that you can only make old school games be extremely, very brutally difficult in that it's the artistic vision that we can't play them any other way.
So it gets really hard by the end. just brutally mean and hard.
Yeah.
But it lets you change difficulty whenever you want and turn on those accessibility options whenever you want. And my favorite part is
that's great.
There's a place in the game that you can find if you explore where you encounter this trinket called the Game Wizard. And if you activate it, it brings up the old NES Game Genie screen.
No.
Like with the 8-bit graphics and the cursor that circles around.
Yes.
And the exact same letters, but I don't know where the codes are. And apparently they're somewhere in the game. And if you put them in, it gives you in-game cheats.
I'm excited to play this now.
So,
I'm so stoked.
So it does get really hard at the end. I warn people. Like, I'm at the last dungeon, and it has no save points in it. And I was like 30 plus minutes in and died. And I had to go back to my previous save.
I do see that it says I'm allowed to be evil, which is my favorite thing to be in video games.
Yes,
they're very, very evil.
There is a morality system, a good versus evil morality, and there is a very good and a very evil ending, I'm guessing.
And it'll be good because I know you only played the good.
I am going towards the good ending, it appears. But no, it's good. I like it. I recommend it. But be prepared because it does get tough as you go forward.
How exciting. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's a good game.
I'm excited for this one. Let's do the news.
Okay.
Halo composers sue Microsoft over unpaid royalties.
Good job, Microsoft.
Good job, Microsoft. You know you're supposed to pay these people. Pretty iconic soundtrack. Might want to give them some money.
Did you read anything about this?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so the composer of it was a member of the Composers Guild. It's like AMSCAP or whatever it is. I don't remember exactly what it is, but it's the guild that they're all a part of. And he had done some work early on the demo for Bungie, and was just like, this is Bungie's work, but anything else that I produce at this point has to be credited to me. It's part of my membership at this guild.
Right.
And Bungie was like, cool. And then Microsoft buys Bungie. And when they were going through the employee contracts with everybody, they get to him and they're like, okay, and you need to sign this contract that says that any work that you do becomes property of Microsoft. And he's like, no, you can't do that. I'm a part of this guild. That's not how composing works. And they're like, no, we have all these software programmers. They know that that's what happens when you program software. And he's like, but now you're talking to a musician. And when you're talking to a musician, you have to go by the Composers Guild rules or whatever it is. And they're like, what? And so they bring in different lawyers from Microsoft that research specifically that. And they're like, oh, I guess we do have to do that. And so they signed a specific contract with them so that they would, still fit that. And then they just proceeded to not pay them accordingly.
Great.
So, good job, Microsoft.
Good job, turn of the millennium, Microsoft.
Right.
You fucking did it. Ubisoft gave its employees a bonus.
Yay.
Finally, some payouts from Ubisoft. They were gifted NFTs.
Oh.
That,
good job, Ubisoft.
Great.
Fuck Ubisoft,
I guess.
Man. What the hell?
Saturn, don't be so harsh. They performed an internal investigation into their sexual assault claims.
Yeah?
And they found no wrongdoing.
Oh, well, good. Finally.
I performed a parallel investigation into how many fucks I give about what they claim to be doing about everything wrong with their company.
Yeah?
And I also found that there were no fucks to give. Fuck you, Ubisoft, you garbage company run by shitheads.
Seriously.
Stop it. Right. Please stop it.
For some reason, my Discord pulled back to a really older conversation the other day when I opened it up, and it was in the middle of you coming up with alternate spellings of the Ubisoft president's name, and one of them was Beavis Jimbo.
I think I said, I'll spell his name right when he stops protecting sexual abuse.
Yeah, something like that.
Good old Beavis Jimbo, leader of Ubisoft. Toshihiro Nagoshi says his post-Yakuza team will not be making mobile games. That's good.
Good, I guess. I'm happy for that because I don't play a lot of mobile games, but it's such a weird declaration to make.
Well, it's just like last episode where Platinum Games is like, we're not going to make NFTs, and everyone's like, good.
Right.
You shouldn't.
Yeah.
Why would you think you should?
Thanks for walking under that bar.
Yeah, stop. I mean, great, but...
Right?
Yeah, we're not going to kill any kittens on this show. Not one. None of them. Praise us.
We established last week we are not a fan of kitten murdering, and we are going to hold to that.
We will not be killing kittens on this show. Now, I can't attest to what we do outside of show hours, but it will not be part of this show.
Right.
Praise us. Mother 3 producer would like to see the game get an English release. What? We would like a game he produced to be released in a language?
Right.
I'm shocked. Nintendo still doesn't care.
Yeah, they won't do anything about it.
They will not fucking localize and release Mother 3. They won't fucking do it. They're not going to do it.
I can't imagine a world in which they do at this point.
Listen, everyone
just based on the game's content, I don't imagine it happening.
Listen very carefully. They're not going to do it.
No,
they're never going to do it.
If they localize Mother 3 for US release, Justin will eat his PC and shit.
God damn it. If you want to know why, because I agree with Saturn that just based on the game's content, I don't think they will. Go listen to our Mother 3 episode because we go into it.
Yeah, indeed.
Nintendo has no plans on joining the metaverse at this time. Nor could they, because they don't know what it is. Because it's nothing. And it is a made-up moniker for a fake internet that doesn't exist.
And also, even if they wanted to, they might have to upgrade their DSL connection. And I don't think they have the money for that right now.
People can't even play Smash Brothers online without lag. How the fuck would they join a metaverse? Thanks, Nintendo. Again, low bars are all around. Speaking of a low bar that they still somehow ran face first into, Nintendo is closing the Wii U and 3DS eShops in March of 2023. That's a year away.
Yeah.
But will continue to allow games to be downloaded, quote, for the foreseeable future.
How magnanimous of them.
So that is up to around 1,000 digital-only games that will only be available via piracy.
I don't like this news, and
No.
I am upset that Nintendo is constantly the only company doing this. Like, Sony acted like they were going to do this, and then they reversed course when it was clear that fans did not want that.
Microsoft still is just like, I don't know, fucking buy XBLA games. They're there. Sure, we don't care.
Like, the only games that Microsoft doesn't make available for purchase are original Xbox games and games for Windows Live games.
Yeah.
Which sucks. It sucks that those are gone.
True.
But that still means most of their library is available. And Nintendo just does not seem to want to make things available for purchase.
I don't. What Nintendo wants, and I feel like this is where we're running into in this digital age, is I feel like Nintendo had this reputation of always being respectful and making their old titles available. And now we've reached a point where making your old titles available does not entail physical manufacture.
Right.
Because we're in the digital age.
Right.
And now we're all realizing that Nintendo was never good about their preserving their legacy.
Right.
They were good about getting you to buy shit again.
Yes, they were good at monetizing their legacy.
They don't give a fuck about their legacy. They want you to buy it again. They want you to buy black box NES games again and again
for
and
$6
again.
a piece.
And you shouldn't, because most of them aren't great today.
Right.
I'm just gonna say it. And it's
Urban Champion
frustrating.
wasn't great then.
Yeah. It's frustrating that they have this reputation of being like the company that preserves their legacy when now of the three, Microsoft seems to be the only one really doing it right, and they're not even putting much effort into it. They're just like, stuff's kind of available. It's
again that low bar.
Yeah.
No, and the thing is, honestly, Nintendo was never good at it. Like, occasionally they would dabble into preserving their legacy with stuff like the NES Classic series and the Virtual Console and whatever.
It was just by comparison. I mean, PlayStation had backward compatibility. Xbox didn't come out till the 2000s. Like, they were just kind of the only game in town.
Yeah, they were the only ones who had that old legacy.
Doing literally anything, even releasing bad GBA ports of off-kilter NES games was better than what other people were doing a lot of the time.
The thing is, prior to that, they had done nothing. Like, in the N64 era, there was no look back at their legacy. They did not care. They were only looking forward. The Super NES era, we got Mario All-Stars. So there was, at that point, it looked like they were going to continue to look back. But in the N64 era, they did not care. The GameCube era, we got some things like the Zelda collections and Animal Crossing and those GBA games. But it wasn't until the Wii that they really took it seriously in any way. And then they destroyed that.
Yep, they killed the Wii. That's been gone.
Yeah.
We are forever worse off because of it. And now they're killing the not as good but still functional Wii U and 3DS eShops.
Yeah, it's just really depressing.
And I feel like we've known this is coming, right?
Yes.
Since we've entered this digital age, we know that we're going to eventually start cycling out of old storefronts, old databases, old availability. But
Nintendo seems to be doing it at an accelerated pace.
Right. They seem to be doing it, again, in this weird way. Like, again, Microsoft, I'm not trying to, like, overly praise them. But they're like, hey, if it can play on the Xbox, we have a license to sell it, then cool, it's on the shop.
Right.
Go get it.
And some of the ones that they don't have a license to sell, they'll let you put in the disc and play it.
Yeah, and I mean, they're doing really the bare minimum, and it feels like so much more than Nintendo is doing.
Which is depressing that the point that Microsoft is at feels like such a high mark.
And when all these shops shut down, suddenly you can't buy Nintendo NES and SNES ROMs anymore because Nintendo Switch Online doesn't let you purchase them.
Right, and we
lets you
that
have
last
access
time.
to them. Yeah.
And also, Nintendo mentioned that free demos won't be available anymore at that point. You can still download anything you've purchased, but free demos will no longer be accessible unless you have downloaded them before. Which, why? Why bother with that?
Why bother taking any of it offline? It's not like you're not making enough money to maintain these servers.
Right.
Fuck off.
Just any single Pokemon release probably gives them enough profit to keep those stores open for another year or two. And
For
it's just
sure.
really frustrating that they...
Or maybe just upgrade the shit, roll it all into the Switch eShop, and let it all be on the same infrastructure. Because I know this is the problem. They're like, well, it's old servers. Like, PS2 memory card ISO loader released, allowing for games to be loaded from a micro SD card inserted into a memory card. This is very good.
Yes.
Because the load times, you could burn discs and that loaded okay, but load times on like internal hard drives and USB and stuff were really slow on the PS2.
Yeah, that's because the USB ports are USB 1.1 ports.
Yes. So this seems to be a much faster way to load ISOs outside of just burning a disc.
Right.
Hundreds of rare, sealed SNES and Genesis games purchased from a warehouse in Nebraska.
Yeah, did you look at any of the pictures?
No,
or videos
I
of
missed this one entirely.
Holy shit. So this it's a smaller game store that seems to be really focused on preservation and helping the community and all that stuff. They don't seem like one of those shady, we're going to grade everything and sell it on eBay kind of people. But they purchased a storage unit that belonged to a former toy or game store or something in Nebraska. And they didn't know what was in it. They thought maybe it was just like a bunch of old Interact controllers or some shit.
Yeah.
And they open up these cases and there's like sealed Chrono Trigger. There's sealed Breath of Fire 2. Just all these Super NES and Genesis era games. Some of them pretty rare. A lot of them kind of trash. Yeah. But just a ton of them all still sealed, ready for retail sale from the mid-90s. So it was basically like walking into a warehouse at a KB Toys circa 95.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's really exciting.
They find any Talk Boys in there?
I can't speak to that.
I'd go for a mint condition Talk Boy. Man fails to rob a bank in a Sonic mask. That's really the whole story. We just wanted to mention it. He couldn't go fast enough to get away.
Yeah.
Intellivision reveals massive debts, asks for even more money to finish making the Amico, which was selling physical games in October. Tommy Tallarico, I believe, has been removed or downgraded in his position at the company. They've brought in some new blood to try to get the project along.
Yeah.
The Amico
some speculation.
It's been the failure that I thought the Chameleon was going to be.
Right. And there's been some speculation now that maybe Tommy Tallarico was kind of grifting some of the money there.
Embezzling? Is that the word?
Yeah, a little bit. There may have been some mild embezzling.
Small, low-key embezzlement. That's all.
Yeah.
It is fascinating to watch this fail in real time. And then it's going on so long that nobody has finally just gone, fuck it, pull the plug.
Seriously.
Which I can only guess is because they had crowdfunding money.
Right.
So I don't know. Sega, quote, ponders NFTs and the multiverse.
What?
Did they mean to say metaverse?
Maybe.
Because it says multiverse here.
I might have typed that wrong. Let me double check.
They ponder the multiverse. Sega, didn't they say they weren't going to do it? Were they the ones that said?
They said that they wouldn't do it if their customers thought that it was a grift. And then they went and told their investors that they're keeping an eye on it now.
Fuck off, Sega. Please, someone, before they fuck themselves, someone just buy them. I know we don't want more corporate consolidation, but please, I feel like Sega's just about to turn around and fuck themselves.
Maybe Capcom and Sega can merge.
Please.
They could fix that.
Something. Make video games. Don't make JPEGs.
God.
And finally, Cyberpunk 2077 update bricks the game for PS4 disc users. The 1.5 update also nerfs critical hits and drops support for a lot of older graphics cards as it finally releases the PS5 and Xbox Series X versions of the game. So it continues to be a hairy train wreck.
Yeah, I saw a video somebody posted from the Series X version where your character's model keeps stretching infinitely in front of yourself.
It's been over a year.
Yeah.
Over a year.
Yeah,
I saw that some one of the main producers or something at CD Projekt Red that worked on The Witcher and was a secondary producer on Cyberpunk 2077 has split off and taken a bunch of talent to make his own game studio. So maybe that'll be where the good talent goes. Or maybe they're the Cyberpunk people and they're going to make trash and CD Projekt Red's going to make good stuff again.
Yeah.
What a fall from Witcher 3 to this, man.
Right.
Let's talk about the topic at hand. This week we're talking Panzer Dragoon Orta.
I could feel you trying to make a good segue there.
I did. I tried, but then I didn't. I feel like I should have.
You're like, I don't want to talk about a fall into the topic. That doesn't sound good.
Speaking of a fall, which is a game where you fly a dragon around and shoot stuff, but this time with a somehow bigger controller.
Yeah.
And I have a question before we get into this.
Yes, sir.
Are on-rails shooters just 3D shmups?
Kinda, yeah.
Because I feel like we both like shmups.
Yes.
We both like on-rails shooters. And as I was playing it, I was like, this is just a shmup.
I don't like all on-rail shooters. Like, I've never gotten into Star Fox.
Oh, yeah, I guess that is an on-rail shooter. I don't like Star Fox either. I like Sin and Punishment, and the Wii version was real good.
Yeah.
That was good. It's a good
those.
game. Panzer Dragoon Orta was developed by Smilebit, published by Sega, came out on the Xbox in Japan December 19th of 02, North America January 12th of 03, and PAL territories March 21st of 03. The 360 version came out worldwide April 19th, 2007 via backward compatibility, and the Xbox One version also via backward compatibility worldwide April 17th, 2018.
Yes.
This is one of those games that I saw on shelves for years.
Mm-hmm.
I just never took the plunge. I feel like I remember this being a pretty common, pretty cheap Xbox title.
Yeah.
I didn't recognize Panzer because I had no idea what the hell a Sega Saturn was. I just assumed it was some kind of weird JRPG. It had a weird name and a dragon on the front, and I was like, yeah, probably just a JRPG, and I ignored it and never played it. Yeah, that's where I was.
That's sad. No, this was one of the reasons I got an Xbox. I had of course already played the Saturn games because I'm that guy.
Yeah,
and I was pretty excited to see the franchise coming back. I remember when this came out, it was a kind of a big deal for the Xbox. It was one of their first big Japanese games, and Sega was treating it as if it were a premiere release on the console.
Mm-hmm.
So it made a minor splash. There's actually a limited Panzer Edition Xbox in Japan that looks gorgeous, and it's probably
I would have started
like $1 billion.
Working at a game store about 2 years after this game came out. So by the time I was seeing it, the hype was gone.
Oh yeah, that would have been well past that. But yeah, it was neat, and it was enough to finally push me into buying Microsoft system, despite the fact that I still felt that Microsoft did not belong in the game industry at the time.
Oh, you were one of those, huh?
Oh, for every console, yes. When the PlayStation came out, I was like, this is Nintendo and Sega's turf. Sony jerks need to get out of here. And
I like your young Saturn voice. You're so shitty about everything.
Well, kids are shitty.
This is true.
And then by the time the Xbox came out, I was like, man, this is Nintendo and Sony's game. What the fuck is Microsoft doing here? So, every time
What'd you say when the Jaguar came out?
I was like, oh man, Atari's back.
They belong.
Yeah.
Tell me about the development for Orta.
Yeah, so it was the team that developed the prior Panzer games was Team Andromeda, which I think we talked about briefly maybe when we did Panzer Dragoon a million years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And they had made those prior games, but they were dismantled following the release of Panzer Dragoon Saga because they made their final game and Sega doesn't need them anymore. But many of the members of that team did find their way to Smilebit, which was another division within Sega. And when Sega decided that they were discontinuing the Dreamcast, which we've talked about a few times, like on the Dreamcast episode, they signed on to make games for all three platforms. And internally, they didn't formalize this, but it seemed that the family-friendly games were going to the GameCube, the general audience games were going to the PS2, and then the weird shit would go to Xbox.
Why not? The Xbox did get some weird shit.
It did, and basically the way that it appeared externally anyway was that Sega had just decided that whoever was making stuff for Xbox, just make what you want, do whatever weird fucking thing you want to do.
Go
That's
nuts.
The platform. Anything that kind of felt Dreamcasty ended up on Xbox. So Smilebit took advantage of the freedom that they had making an Xbox game. And decided they wanted to revive Panzer Dragoon and do things they couldn't do with those first two games with the new hardware.
Yeah.
And I think that is shown off in the game.
Yeah. Let's talk gameplay. So this is an on-rails shooter. You play as Orta from the back of a dragon.
Yeah.
You can shift your view with the triggers like you could in the original game. I will say that in this one, as opposed to the original, and I should say I have not played the sequel to Panzer Dragoon, which is obviously Panzer Dragoon R-Zone, which came out on the Tiger R-Zone. I've also not played the third game in the series, which would be Zwei.
Yeah. Was that before or after the Game Gear game?
That was before Mini, which was the Game Gear game.
All right.
So I've only played the original Panzer. So this may also be the case in Panzer Dragoon 2. But because of how much movement and banking and direction changing you do in Orta, the shifting your view with your triggers can be kind of disorienting.
Yeah.
I noticed that a lot of the time I'd be shifting my view to look at something right as the camera was panning. And there's some panning in the original game, but it's a lot slower and a lot more infrequent.
Right.
You're much more static. So I found that a little disorienting.
This one does try to be a little more cinematic.
It does.
Taking advantage of the hardware of the Xbox.
Yes, which it looks great. I mean, we didn't talk about graphics and stuff yet, but it does a good job of looking very cinematic. But when it's intentionally and constantly trying to force camera angles,
right.
Also, me trying to adjust for my radar makes that weird.
Yeah, I can see that.
It does let you speed up or slow down.
Yes.
Which the game uses mostly to have you avoid and maneuver around to weak points on bosses.
Right.
And this is kind of accomplished with you have a boost and a brake button, effectively. They do recharge over time, and I ended up not liking this mechanic as I was playing the game.
It mostly frustrates me. I'm with you there.
Because it creates these tension points where you're supposed to boost or brake to dodge an attack from an enemy or from usually a boss.
Yeah.
But first of all, it's hard to tell if you're supposed to boost or brake because of how the camera angle shifts so much. So a lot of times you're like, all right, they're swinging their arm at me from the right, so I need to boost away from it. But in reality, you need to brake away from it. And if you hit the wrong one, it's on a recharge. So you just get hit because you hit the wrong direction. Now you're stuck waiting for your fucking recharge.
Right.
And I feel like if they had just taken the recharge away from the boosting and braking, it would have made it significantly less of a hassle. In this one.
Yeah, I can see that.
Your dragon does have 3 forms. You have the base wing, which is just like the original game.
Pretty much the only one I use.
Yep. You hold the fire button, you drag it over things, it locks on. You can tap it for like a rapid shot. You have heavy wing, which makes your weapons more powerful, but you can't lock onto as many targets. And then here's the big one. You can't change speed. You can't boost or brake when you're in heavy wing mode. Which makes it virtually useless.
Right.
Because the only time you'd want to use heavy wing, which does more damage but has less lock-on targets, is against a boss where there are less
to be
targets
boosting
to
all
lock
the
on.
damn time.
Yeah, and you have to, so it's totally useless. And then there's the glide wing, which is a big giant reticle, and it like auto homing fires on anything in your view.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't have lock-on, but it is rapid fire. Mm-hmm. This one is marginally useful in some segments where you're boosting through the scenery really fast.
Right.
And it's just changing camera angles so fast that you can't really lock on or sweep over enemies.
That's fair.
So this one I do use some of the time.
But I mostly use base wing.
Yeah. Even the game is like, just use the base wing. I don't remember where it says it, but it's like, just do that. You can level up your different dragon forms by collecting little level up items. But once a weapon is max level, it can't be upgraded further, and picking up additional upgrades with that weapon just does nothing.
Yeah.
So there's this kind of weird game you have to play where you get an upgrade and you're like, all right, I'm on the base wing. The base wing is totally maxed out. I don't want to use the power wing. I need to hit Y twice to get to the glide wing to upgrade my glide wing. And it turns into you just ignoring the upgrades because they're annoying. There are alternate paths available by taking different routes that are completely non-evident within the game. You cannot tell where they are.
Right.
Dying at a boss.
How it is in Star Fox too.
True.
Some of those you really have to know where they are beforehand.
Dying at a boss now respawns you right before the boss, which is a huge improvement for me.
Right.
And I mean, I swear, like, did they bring in treasure to develop these bosses? Because these are some of the longest These are treasure length boss fights, every one of them.
Right.
So being able to respawn before the boss and not redo the level is a big deal.
Absolutely.
And you can unlock the original Panzer Dragoon in the game. So once you beat the game on any difficulty, you can go find it. And it's apparently the Windows 95 port of the game.
Yeah, because they couldn't get the Saturn emulator to run on the Xbox at anything close to reasonable speed. So they just did a straight up DirectX port of the Windows 95 version. And at the time, I couldn't tell the difference between that and the Saturn version. I thought it was pretty dang close. Yeah. But some people online have pointed out the minor little nitpicks that you can tell between the Windows port and the old Saturn version. But it's still fine. It's still.
I do want to talk about that version, but I want to talk more about Orta because I feel like all I've done is bitch about the gameplay right now. But I think you hit the nail on the head. They wanted this to be a really cinematic game.
Yeah.
And I think that comes across. But I think what they wanted the game to look and feel like is almost at odds with how the game actually plays a lot of the time.
Yeah, I can see that.
And I do find it enjoyable. But it's a very simple game, like so many other on-rails shooters, like the first game.
Yeah.
There's not a lot going on. You've got 3 weapons. One of them is virtually useless. One of them is mostly useless.
Right.
The upgrade system happens kind of automatically. You don't have to interact with it or anything. There's no levels to gain or points to assign.
No skill tree or anything.
And so it just kind of creates this situation where it's kind of shallow for an Xbox title.
Yeah, it feels like a press the button simulator for a lot of it. Fortunately, it has a lot of beautiful scenery for you to look at and great music and everything. So there's something there, but the thing that is there is not deep gameplay.
Yeah. Did the original Panzer Dragoon have all the cheats that are included in this version in Orta?
I don't think they're unlocked normally.
Because I was playing.
Just unlocks them.
First of all, wizard mode, which is great. It runs it at double speed, which gives it a much more playable frame rate. And then you can turn on like dragon only mode, invincibility. Right. There's level select just by regular cheat code inputs.
Yeah, I want to say that those are in the Saturn version as well, if I remember right. But I think you have to do something to unlock them. It's been a while since I've played with that.
Yeah. So it's funny. I played through the whole game and I enjoyed it, and I think it was not because of the gameplay. It was definitely because of the presentation. So why don't you walk us through some of that?
Well, it's pretty. It's a pretty looking game. Done.
It is. Great job. Done. Perfect.
No, it's very, very bright and colorful and impressive. And it was 480p 60 on the original Xbox, assuming you had component cables for your Xbox. And what got me was so many of the Xbox games of that era were already, like, Halo is an exception, but a lot of them were already starting to go towards that brown look.
Yeah.
And to see Orta there was all these bright blues and purples and greens really did stand out. Unfortunately, that was not what the Xbox audience was looking for. So
no,
it did not help its sales, at least here in the West. And I think it's one of the better looking games on the system, personally.
Absolutely, yeah.
The soundtrack is just beautiful. It fits the vibe of the game.
I think all the Panzer soundtracks are pretty. I'd say pretty celebrated games.
Yeah.
Game soundtracks. I mean, and this was Sayori Kobayashi who did this one. And it's real good.
Oh yeah.
I do really like aesthetically, and you kind of touch on it, but just like world building wise, because we're gonna get into the story, because the story's there is one.
Yeah.
There, as compared to like the original Panzer. I know later Panzers, like especially Saga, because it was an RPG, had much more story.
Yes.
But this one's really good about like showing a much more diverse and interesting world than the first Panzer. I feel like. Because in the original Panzer, like, they don't explore a lot,
right?
And the very short draw distance on the Saturn and stuff, like, I want to know more about this really cool world with these weird dragons, right? This weird, like, almost post-apocalyptic looking strange water world with dragons kind of thing going on. And they have some really cool aesthetic and world building in Orta. One of my favorites is and we'll talk about him. You run into this group of people that live on basically an enormous city-sized like sand stingray thing.
Right. Yeah.
And it has like trees and terrain growing on the back. Just really cool world building bits that. That I think really adds a lot to my enjoyment of it. Like I kept playing not because the gameplay was amazing. It's fine. It's fine on rails shooting.
Right.
But I kept playing because I wanted to see what new weird shit they were gonna do.
Yeah, I kept meaning to look up to see what other games the artists behind it had worked on, because it's such a unique art style and just world design that I wanted to see more of it. But I'm afraid that if I do look it up, it'll be like, oh, they worked on Samba de Amigo, and
yeah,
you know.
And before we get into the story, I did want to mention there's a bunch of unlockable episodes in Orta. The few I played were pretty bad and not fun. They seem to be mostly related to Empire type of storylines.
Yeah.
The first one I had me in like a wheelchair jetpack with no dragon, and I couldn't touch the walls or I would explode. So that wasn't fun.
Nice.
But there is a good amount of story outside of the main story in Orta. Like a good amount of additional, I can't call them episodes or something. That mostly deal with like Imperial storylines. But it's relatively in depth. It has like little cutscenes and stuff. It's pretty cool if you're really interested in the world of the game. But let's talk story, Saturn.
Oh boy.
Orta is the princess you play as. And she has been locked up by the Empire for her whole life.
Right.
And the game opens with a dragon exploding into the tower she's been locked in.
Right.
And she jumps on his back, pulls out a gun from somewhere.
Right. She's had it.
And just begins killing Imperial dragons and troops.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
She's attacked by a bunch of dragon mares. She escapes.
Right.
And that's it. They fly away, and you run into a bad guy. A character named Abad.
Who are you? I am a bad man.
I just realized it too. He is an ancient like creation of humans. Humans make, what do they call them?
Worm riders?
No. The guys like Abad that they made.
The
fake people,
shit.
drones.
Yeah.
Drones.
Yeah.
He's a drone.
Yeah.
And when you run into him, you don't really know what he wants. He's just like this weird kind of strange looking dude.
Right.
And then you quickly jet away from him and end up interacting with Worm Riders.
Yes.
Which is this big, giant, kind of diverse village of characters that really makes it seem like they're going to open up the gameplay here to some new stuff, and then they don't.
Nope.
They just don't.
Yeah.
I
wonder if like somebody on the project thought they were making a sequel to Panzer Dragoon Saga, and like they made this whole world and story and everything, and then once the gameplay was actually in production, they're like, oh no, we're not doing that.
We're not doing any of this.
Yeah.
And you run into the Worm Riders. There's a bunch of cutscenes. They all have really cool like little dragons and stuff they ride on with like different contraptions built in them. They're just really cool. I really want to play as them. But as far as I know, you can't.
No.
And she makes friends there.
Yep.
With Mobo.
Yeah, which is short for
one of the
motherboard.
people.
That's his
Yeah,
full name.
of course. And then the Empire attacks. And you basically leave the Worm Riders behind after you do a couple levels with the Worm Riders, and I will say it's some of the most interesting and diverse levels in the game.
Yeah.
Just some of the coolest, like very like naturalistic. You're exploring the nature side of the game, which is I think where the game really shines.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some of those environments are just fantastic to look
gorgeous.
at. But then you're quickly plunged back into Imperial plots. The Empire attacks.
Right.
Abad shows back up, and he's like, "Yeah, I know all about you," and he sends her to some weird tower thing, saying that she's the daughter of Azel.
I think it's Azel. I always said Azel.
From Panzer Dragoon Saga.
Right. Which if you've played Panzer Dragoon Saga, there's a lot more story about this whole Empire and bullshit.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then basically Abad turns on her and is like, hey, I'm gonna use you as a weapon.
Yes.
Pretty much. I'm gonna clone myself. I'm gonna take over the world. I'm a bad guy now. Ha ha ha. You didn't see it coming from literally the first line, even though you definitely did.
Yeah.
And then she
was a
attacks.
bad man.
Yeah, then she attacks the Imperial capital along with Mobo after breaking out of a bad... He has her in some kind of like weird ancient computer system thing.
Yeah.
And it gets all kind of like weird and squirrely and Final Fantasy 9-y for a minute there.
Yeah.
And
a little.
So the game retreats into its own ass and then pops back out the other side, where she goes and she attacks the Imperial capital.
Honestly, it kind of reminds me of the same weird bullshit at the end of Phantasy Star Online.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which was also Sega and also this era.
So she goes and fights the Imperials with Mobo and the Worm Riders. Abad shows up and suddenly has a giant dragon from somewhere, we guess. It pulled it out of his own ass.
Yeah.
And then you fight Abad and you defeat his dragon and you theoretically save the world because you just destroyed like the whole Empire's capital city.
Right.
And
then the ending is a happy ending, right? It's totally happy.
And then right after defeating him, your dragon crashes into the earth and dies.
Yeah.
And then the narrator's like, and he's dead. And you're like, fuck, man. And then they show you the whole credit scene. And at this time, I'm texting you and I'm like, what the fuck is this fucking ending? Because there's a moment halfway through the game where your dragon crashes and you lose your wings. And you have to do like half of a level on the ground because your wings are ripped up.
Yeah.
And then suddenly in the middle of that level, it jumps off of a ledge and sprouts new wings because why didn't it do that from the beginning? But, you know, so you're like waiting on the dragon to get back up and it does not.
No.
And you watch this whole segment and you text Saturn and you go, what the fuck is this fucking ending? And then there's a post-credits scene. And then there's a little tiny baby dragon because apparently the dragon left an egg, like squirted out an egg right when it died. I don't know.
Just farted out an egg on its way down.
I died. Orta is there with this baby dragon, which is the cutest thing in the world. I mean, it looks like a weird scrotum monster, but you know, it's cute in the grand scheme.
Yeah, in context.
And presumably they go off on new adventures.
Right.
And the story never, unlike the really cool diverse environments that they're willing to explore, they don't seem to want to explore the story at all.
No.
It really kind of goes nowhere.
Yeah. Oh, it not only goes nowhere, but several plot elements seem to come from nowhere too.
Yeah. Like halfway through, they get kind of weird, like Echo the Dolphin-y with it. And then all of a sudden they're like, no, actually, you're just killing the Empire.
Don't go that far.
Yep. Then they're just like, no, you just kill the Empire. That's it. And then you fight another big dragon that's bigger than your dragon. And that's it.
Yeah.
And you're done. And that's kind of the game.
Yeah. And it's weird that, because when we spell it out this plainly,
right,
it feels like it should be pretty bad because the story makes little sense. The gameplay is kind of dry. But
it's early era on rails shooter gameplay.
Right. But the culmination of everything creates really this weird artistic piece that is enough to convince me to keep going.
Yeah. It's really kind of the same thing that the original Panzer Dragoon, you know, it's how it was compelling.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I think this one suffers. Like, I think I like the original Panzer more, just because this one introduces gameplay frustrations.
Yeah. Oh, with the boost mode and everything. Yeah.
Which wear on you. I did play this in several sittings. It's not a terribly long game. I think the whole thing's 2-3 hours, maybe.
Yeah. About
you know. That. I feel like
which was frustrating to me when I paid $50 for it and bought an Xbox for it.
Yeah, you told me, you're like, I bought an Xbox for this, and I was like, oh shit, Saturn, I'm sorry. That must have been a disappointing Saturday morning when you realized.
I mean, I bought other games with it too, but but this was the one that was like, all right, I'm pushed over the edge. I'm buying an Xbox.
You know, those frustrations are there, and it's a little bit annoying. But it's just a really good looking game, and I feel like those middle levels where you're kind of exploring the world, where you're doing the ground level with your dragon after it gets its wings ripped off, like they're some of the best.
Yeah.
And then by the end of it, you're just hammering through Imperial level after Imperial level and fighting big Imperial machines. Then you fight a big dragon. Like
Yeah.
The middle of the game is great. I think the original game might still be a little more compelling for me on the whole. This one is a more diverse, but also a more frustrating experience, I think, compared to the first one.
I feel like I hold them pretty close to one another. I just see them as technologically different. Like one feels like the Panzer Dragoon of the 32-bit era, and the other one is the Panzer Dragoon of the Xbox era.
I can see that.
And so they kind of feel different enough to me that I can enjoy them each in their own way.
Now, if I had played Panzer Dragoon 2, I might feel differently.
Yeah, I'd say Panzer Dragoon Zwei is a bit better than the first one. The first one I would still say is a more compelling game just because it was more original. But right. I feel like the second one did refine it a bit.
I do think if I had played the Panzer Dragoon remake, I might prefer that to Orta.
Oh. Have you not played that yet?
I've not played the remake. No, I was going to, and then I didn't, and I just haven't gotten around to it for whatever reason.
I played it on Stadia.
Oh boy, Saturn.
Yeah.
How is it?
It's good. It's a good remake. It looks gorgeous, by the way.
And they're doing a remake of Zwei as well.
They are.
Which is going to be coming out. So I don't. I think in the canon of Panzer Dragoon, after I've played the other ones, Orta might go down a little bit for me. But I still think it's good.
Yeah,
I still think I had a good time with it. I really enjoy those middle levels. I would have liked less. I'm fighting the Imperials and more Orta just going through cool, diverse, natural environments in this world.
Yeah,
you know.
And when it came out, I remember talking with one of my coworkers at EB at the time, and the two of us were like, "I really hope this sells really well, so that they make a Panzer Dragoon Orta RPG, as a follow up to Panzer Dragoon Saga." Just because we wanted to see more of that world from like a full RPG perspective. That did not happen, by the way.
Do you think they're going to remake Saga if Zwei does well?
No. No, because...
out of the question?
Because they lost too much of the code for Saga. And they still
really? I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's gone. They still had some of the code for the first two. And in the parts they didn't have, these guys remade from scratch. Completely, and they did a phenomenal job, at least with this first one. And they said they were able to do so because it was a relatively basic game. And they, so far in their interviews, have said we don't have the ability to do that at the scale of Panzer Dragoon Saga. So
yeah, Saga is, and I know we're off on a tangent now, but it is so beloved.
Yeah,
I really need to play it sometime. It looks very weird.
It is very weird. I will definitely give it that. It
I'm
does
down for weird.
It does have that late 90s era JRPG slowness at times.
Yeah, I feel like I'd probably emulate it rather than burn it on my Saturn, so I can fast forward some stuff.
But it does have the advantage of on rails Panzer Dragoon shooting stages. So
there you go. Tell me about reception and legacies for Orta.
Yeah, so it received incredibly well by both critics and fans upon release. That did not exactly translate to sales, at least in the West. It did sell pretty well over here. Not phenomenally well, though. Compared to a lot of other Xbox games, it was pretty minor, but it still sold pretty well. I do, as a slight tangent, I remember when I got my Xbox, because I bought my Xbox and this and Gun Valkyrie and Jet Set Radio and Steel Battalion. And when I was buying all that, my boss at EB was like, "Why aren't you buying Halo?" And I'm like, "I don't want Halo. I want Panzer Dragoon." And he's like,
"Yeah.
Why aren't you buying Halo or Brute Force?" And I'm like, "Okay, first of all,
Force. Oh my God,
Brute Force." And that's when I learned that was his favorite game, and I made fun of him for months. Anyway, so
that's like your favorite PS2 game being State of Emergency 2. Like,
gross. But anyway, the most common criticism that I found in reviews of the time was regarding either the difficulty or the short length of the game.
It is pretty hard, even on easy mode.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
For sure.
But I definitely only play it on easy mode because I am a mere mortal. It was frequently listed on best of Xbox lists throughout the last 20 years. I saw it took the 10th place in Games Radar's 2017 list of best Xbox games from the original platform. Despite critical acclaim, it's estimated to have sold about 260,000 copies during the game's life, with only 40,000 of those in Japan, which might mean that they sold 40,000 Xbox units in Japan.
That might mean that. Yeah. That would be about right.
Yeah. And I think over half of those were the limited edition Panzer Dragoon Xbox.
Oh, they must have been.
Which that's
right.
Ooh, that's painful.
That's gotta hurt.
Yeah. So
I'm sure that thing's worth like $1,000 now.
A gajillion dollars, something like that. It's a really pretty looking Xbox. It's white and it has like Panzer Dragoon style markings. It's very pretty. Anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Let's talk legacy.
Yeah. So
we did a little bit already, but still.
So it's been 20 years and I'm still waiting for another Panzer Dragoon.
Where's the next one?
Right. We did get the HD remake of 1, and like you mentioned, the HD remake of 2 is on the way.
When you look at the little timeline for Panzer, it's like a bunch of stuff up through 96, then 98 is Saga, and then all the way up to 2000 is Orta, and then 2003 to 2019 is nothing, and then all of a sudden we have 2 remakes. So,
here's hoping.
Maybe
somebody at Sega. It's weird because Sega has been doing this thing lately where they are outsourcing a lot of their older franchises to these smaller indie companies to make stuff. The remakes of Panzer Dragoon are a smaller indie company. The remakes of the Wonder Boy games have been smaller indie companies, and they let somebody else make a Streets of Rage sequel out of nowhere. So maybe modern Sega will be like, if somebody wants to make a new Panzer Dragoon, make a new Panzer Dragoon. We don't know.
Or they'll sell us little Panzer Dragoon NFTs with all the different little dragons. You can buy those
dare
JPEGs.
You? Why would you even plant that idea in the world?
Definitely a money-making scheme, though, Sega. Yeah. So, be careful.
Just redeem your Panzer coins that you can spend on Panzer bucks.
I'm going to throw up.
Then use. But yeah, so Smilebit, which had some of the people from Team Andromeda in it, then itself got merged into Amusement Vision and was ultimately renamed Sega Sports R&D, where they made some Mario and Sonic at the Olympics games before they were shut down. But several of the staff members that worked on Panzer Dragoon are still at Sega, and some of them even work on modern games. So, I actually, while we were doing this, I looked up the artist because I want to know what he was up to, and apparently he's making Yakuza games. So, and the game was ultimately added to backwards compatibility, so you can play it on Xbox One and on Series X, and they added Xbox One X enhancements that are also available on the Series X, so that you can run the game at up to 16 times the original resolution.
Holy cow!
So it does play at 4K when you're playing it on a One X or a Series X.
Yeah.
And it looks gorgeous in 4K. I just got to say, it's really pretty.
That's good. I at least they're doing something.
Yeah, it's something. You played it on your Series X, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It looks great in 4K.
Works great.
It looks great.
I do feel like Space Harrier, Fantasy Zone, and Panzer Dragoon all share this weird, strange alien post-apocalyptic world vibe.
Yeah.
You ever feel that?
I could see that.
I always feel these weird parallels between these three universes. Space Harrier and Fantasy Zone a lot.
Yeah, until you said that, it never occurred to me that Panzer Dragoon kind of feels like a spiritual successor to Space Harrier.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also in a very weird kind of land, I mean, in Space Harrier, the marketing and in the game, I think it mentions Fantasy Zone. It implies that you're in the Fantasy Zone.
I believe that, yeah.
Although Fantasy Zone, I don't believe necessarily takes place within the Fantasy Zone. It is just named Fantasy Zone.
Yeah. They just liked that term.
And so, I don't know. I've always, these three games, I've always kind of like drawn parallels between their weird post-apocalyptic worlds. Because Fantasy Zone has got to be post-apocalyptic. I mean, they're living spaceships that cry and stuff. Like, this is post-apocalyptic.
Yeah, clearly.
All the way. So yeah, I don't know. These three
or they could
franchises.
be aliens that just happen to look like spaceships.
Also possible.
Yeah.
Also possible. As far as final thoughts on Panzer Dragoon Orta, now that we've totally gone off the rails,
Right.
For $9 on that I paid on the Xbox store, it was worth it. I think it's a solid game. It's fun. I don't quite enjoy it as much as the original, but the original is included in it, and you can play it, and it's fun, and the cheats are accessible. So I think it makes a compelling package, even if I don't totally love all of the gameplay tweaks they made in Orta. Like, if they did Orta again and removed all of the extreme camera panning and the boosting and the braking and stuff, but kept everything else intact, I think I'd enjoy it more.
What if they gave you 100% camera control, just like a modern game?
Oh man, wouldn't that be wonderful?
Oh yeah,
what a pie in the sky dream we can have. So yeah, for $9.99, well worth it. Yeah. Fun game, enjoyable, really cool world. Gets a little near the end, but that's about it. And it's got the entire like second chapter with the little Imperial kid that you can explore, and the original game for $9.
What about for $50 in 2003 money?
If I was also living in 2003, I'd probably enjoy it because my options for entertainment are more limited in 2003. For $50, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know.
It was rough, but I still enjoyed it. I'm not gonna lie about that. I had fun with the game. I did not regret my purchase, though I was sad about how short it was. So I forced myself to replay the first game multiple times on it just to justify my purchase.
Yeah.
But no,
I do wish it made the A and B paths more evident, because I would like to play it again, like do all A paths and then do all B paths, but because I can't tell where they are in the level, I feel like it's just going to be more frustrating than anything.
I do remember looking up on GameFAQs at the time to figure out exactly when to do that stuff, and I had like written notes and everything, and then promptly never did it.
Yeah.
So but it is an option. But no, I enjoyed it. It is one of the games that I still go back to from the original Xbox. It's one of the games that I am very happy to have seen come to backwards compatibility, just because now I don't have to plug in an Xbox anymore unless I am playing Steel Battalion. So, and I'm glad that it's available for a new generation to buy digitally, that you don't have to hunt down a 20-year-old Xbox disc just to play it.
For sure. Yeah, I $50 would have felt like a lot for it.
It did feel like a lot, especially since at the same time I had spent $50 on Phantasy Star Online, which I got hundreds of hours of gameplay out of that.
Well, if you'd like to spend $50 on hundreds of hours of something enjoyable, then might I recommend patreon.com/Retro Warriors, where we have many hours of uncut shows and Talking Wizards and After Hours. It's just, man, there's so I could, if I were to guess, we've probably got like, I don't know, we've done 340 something episodes. Mm-hmm. There's got to be like almost 700 hours of audio there.
Yeah.
Just sitting there on the Patreon. It's a lot now that I'm like quantifying. Right? We have 100 episodes of Talking Wizards, 350 episodes of this. If every episode of those shows was only an hour, that would be almost 500 hours on its own.
Yeah.
And I know that most of them are more than an hour, so we're probably talking 600 hours, 700 hours of audio that you can just listen to it all day long. You can feel like you know us, like we're your friends.
700 hours of Justin talking pouring into your ear holes.
And then if you do want to be our friends in real life, you can join our Discord.
Yes.
Because we don't have friends. We have Discord friends.
Right.
So,
hell, we barely see each other anymore. We just talk on Discord.
This is true. I haven't seen Saturn since Christmas.
It's true, yeah. And before that, it was like a year.
Yeah, it's crazy. So come hang out with us in Discord, rate and review us on stuff that you like, and listen while we thank the following patrons, starting with Alex. Someone just wrote hum the entire theme tune for Airwolf, please. Yeah,
it's not doing the entire theme, but you get that much.
And Chris Minochi.
And Novocaine FS.
Poncho Man Randy Savage.
Edward Majewski Jr.
Video Rangers Podcast.
Nick Brown.
Mark Meredith.
And Matthew Davis.
Are all the patrons we want to thank. And we want to thank you too, because you do a lot with your listening and stuff. It means a lot. It means a lot to us.
So thank you, Ted.
Thank you. Yeah, Ted, if you're listening, join the fucking Discord already. What are you doing? You just click the link. It's in the show notes description.
Come on, Ted.
It puts you right in the fucking server. It's easy. Why don't you want to be our friend?
Some dude named Ted is listening to this right now. And he's like,
He's
"What
probably
the
like driving, not paying attention. He's like, oh shit. They got my number. Anyway, thanks so much for listening. We'll be back next week. And as always, let us cling together.